In the United States today, a disturbing pattern has emerged. Prominent pastors, apologists, evangelists, and denominational leaders find themselves under relentless scrutiny. Often decades old, sometimes vague allegations surface, frequently amplified by media outlets that position themselves as independent investigators. Ministries fracture, congregations dwindle. Once respected voices are erased from public discourse. To many observers, this is not random misfortune or righteous accountability. It is a coordinated assault on Christianity itself. The assumption is stark but increasingly difficult to dismiss when viewed through the lens of history, human nature, and the current cultural moment. Anti-Christian forces, empowered by vast financial resources and ideological zeal, are engaged in a full-scale effort to eradicate biblical faith as we know it. These powers operate under the banner of secular progress, militant atheism, or social justice. They possess resources that ordinary volunteers could never sustain. A group capable of printing money without governmental accountability doesn't need grassroots donations. It can fund lawsuits, private investigators, media campaigns, and so-called independent firms indefinitely. No receipts will ever be shown to the public, of course. Yet the scale of operations suggests professional, well-financed machinery rather than spontaneous outrage. Consider the words of one of the most influential figures in modern atheism. In his 2002 TED Talk titled Militant Atheism, Richard Dawkins did not merely critique religion. He called for aggressive public confrontation and, crucially, appealed for financial support to advance the cause. Near the end of the address, urging atheists to stop being so damned respectful of religious beliefs, he explicitly stated that the movement will need money.
And if you happen to be rich, give some thought to ways in which you might make a difference. The religious lobby in this country is massively financed by foundations, say nothing of all the tax benefits, by foundations such as the Templeton Foundation and the Discovery Institute. We need an anti-Templeton to step forward. If my books sold as well as Stephen Hawking's books, instead of only as well as Richard Dawkins's books, I'd do it myself. People are always going on about how did September the 11th change you? Well, here's how it changed me. Let's all stop being so damned respectful.
These go way beyond passive promotion of atheist literature. Militant implies combat. When one side solicits funds to fight the other, the conflict is no longer intellectual, it is strategic warfare. Dawkins made the tactic even clearer in public statements captured on video. He urged followers to mock them, ridicule them, and do so in public with contempt, referring directly to Christians and their faith.
Mock them, ridicule them. In public. Don't fall for the convention that we're all too polite to talk about religion. Religion is not off the table. Religion is not off limits. Religion makes specific claims about the universe which need to be substantiated and need to be challenged, and if necessary, need to be ridiculed with contempt.
The message is unmistakable. Shame is a weapon. Believers must be made to feel embarrassed, isolated, and morally inferior simply for holding to historic Christian doctrine. History and the Bible both confirm a timeless truth. Those who are wrong cannot tolerate the mere existence of those who are right. The presence of righteousness acts as a living condemnation. That is why Christianity remains the most persecuted faith on earth, not merely in distant lands under dictators or Islamists, but increasingly in the West, through lawfare, reputational destruction, and cultural exile. Jesus himself foretold it. Blessed are they who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The operational playbook is now clear. Investigative teams come along. They often style themselves as neutral, professional firms. They like to call themselves independent. Considering how news outlets that call themselves independent, how they operate, this should already raise strong suspicion. In the background, operators comb through the entire life histories of influential preachers or leaders. Every sermon, every private conversation, every financial transaction from decades past is exhumed. Real or alleged sexual sins, emotional affairs, associations with long-departed flawed leaders, and even sins committed by predecessors are laid at the current minister's feet by guilt of association. Cases from 30 or 40 years ago are revived as if they happened yesterday. The language of the reports is uniformly condemnatory. Pattern of abuse, credible allegations, toxic culture. Christian organizations feeling external pressure from donors, media, or cultural elites sometimes hire these very firms to investigate themselves, which is an act of institutional suicide. Expecting objectivity from investigators whose business model thrives on scandal is naive at best. Look at some Catholic Church examples. Real failures exist and no serious Christian defends abuse. Yet the narrative crafted by headlines creates the impression of epidemic proportions. One report highlighted 29 cases over 30 years and spun them to suggest that nearly every priest is a suspect. The public absorbs the feeling, not the facts. The same tactic appears in Protestant and evangelical circles. Ministries collapse under unproven allegations, even when the accused ministers deny everything, because leaders panic and remove charismatic but now stained figures. Without the founder's vision and anointing, the organization withers. The accusers win either way. Two high-profile cases illustrate the pattern with painful clarity. Ravi Zacharias was one of the most brilliant Christian apologists of his generation. His intellectual depth, philosophical rigor, and global impact left even prominent atheists appearing underpowered by comparison. After his death in 2020, a so-called Christian news outlet and subsequent quote-unquote independent investigation unleashed serious allegations of sexual misconduct. The charges dominated headlines. Ministries distanced themselves. Legacy projects were scrubbed. Yet Ravi's family never accepted the narrative. His son Nathan has publicly maintained his father's innocence, calling the investigation biased, unethical, and lacking due process. The family launched a defense site and continues to preserve and distribute Ravi's teachings, insisting the evidence does not support the claims leveled against him. The messenger was eliminated. The message, the powerful defense of the gospel that had won countless intellectuals to Christ, has been sidelined. Conveniently so. Australian Cardinal George Pell, a formidable intellectual defender of the faith, faced Richard Dawkins in a 2010 public debate at Macquarie University, or Macquarie or whatever. In one memorable exchange, Dawkins advanced the idea that nothing made everything, and that nothing is somehow something. The awkward attempt to distort reality prompted audible laughter from the audience. Dawkins appeared genuinely puzzled by the reaction. The exchange preserved in debate footage revealed more about philosophical blind spots than any logical victory.
Exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
Years later, Pell was accused of historic child sexual abuse. He was convicted and imprisoned. The case became international news. Here was another prominent Christian voice silenced. Then the High Court of Australia unanimously overturned the conviction in 2020, ruling it a miscarriage of justice. The evidence simply did not hold. Pell was exonerated, but the reputational damage and time lost were irreversible. The pattern repeated. Accusation, condemnation, collapse of influence, followed too late by quiet vindication. Who will be the next target? Ray Comfort, the bold New Zealand-born evangelist, is another opponent of Richard Dawkins. He is known for his street preaching and the Way of the Master series. He stands as one of the clearest, most uncompromising voices in modern evangelism. He has not yet faced public accusations of the kind that felled others. The absence is notable. Given the intensity of the current campaign, many wonder whether is it only a matter of time before the machinery turns toward him. Comfort's innocence is not in question among those who know his decades of consistent, transparent ministry. But in this climate, absence of accusation feels less like exoneration and more like a temporary reprieve. Who funds this machinery? Who coordinates the quote-unquote independent firms that suddenly appear whenever a Christian leader gains cultural traction? Why do some ostensibly Christian media outlets amplify these stories with such eagerness? The questions are uncomfortable, yet the incentives align. Militant atheism, which was once content with debate, now operates with the confidence of institutional power. Media, academia, corporations, and legal systems are increasingly aligned against biblical orthodoxy. When one side controls the narrative, the courts, the purse strings, persecution does not require jackboots. It requires only persistence, money, and the willingness to weaponize shame. Christian organizations that cave to pressure and hire these external investigators do so at their peril. The firms exist to dismantle, not to discern. Their language is designed to produce headlines, not justice. Leaders who preemptively remove accused ministers, quote-unquote, to protect the ministry, often discover they have destroyed the very thing they sought to save. The charismatic anointing that built the work cannot be replaced by committees or damage control consultants. None of this surprises those who take the scriptures seriously. The powers of this age have always sought to silence the church. What is new is the sophistication, the use of therapeutic language, trauma-informed investigation, the pretense of neutrality, the financial opacity, and the speed with which social media turns allegation into permanent verdict. Believers must reject naive trust in the unbelieving world's pronouncements about God's servants. Accusations deserve investigation if they are based on facts. A real investigation must be conducted according to biblical standards of evidence, multiple witnesses, and due process. Deuteronomy 19:15. But they do not deserve automatic belief. The mere existence of a thriving, unashamed Christian ministry is itself offensive to a culture that has rejected its creator. The offense drives the hunt. The Antichrist shifted gears. The Antichrist spirit is not content with private disbelief. It demands public submission and the eradication of competing voices. Yet the blood of the martyrs has always been the seed of the church. Every fallen leader who is later vindicated, every ministry that refuses to bow, every believer who stands firm despite the cost, testifies to a greater reality. The gates of hell shall not prevail. The accused preachers of our day are not merely facing personal trials. They stand on the front lines of a spiritual conflict whose ultimate outcome was settled at the cross. Let the church refuse to participate in its own dismantling. Let us discern the times, and let us remember the promise that belongs to every servant persecuted for righteousness' sake. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you.